Hello, everybody. You're welcome to the first episode of the Democracy Games podcast. Democracy Games podcast seeks to explore citizens' options at winning in a democratic setting. We have very experienced and seasoned guests today. By my right, we have Amina Yahaya. Amina is a development expert and has experienced democracy across Africa. We also have with us on set Faith Waziri or Momwem. You're welcome. Faith works with Women in Politics Forum and has experience programming with women in politics at the grassroots and at the national level. We also have Nkiru Uzodi, aka Brainy. She's at the forefront of several electoral and constitutional reforms. If you've also seen the documentary Underrepresented, that is her brain work. She's also experienced in legislative advocacy and gender and inclusion advocacy. We also have Hassan Nurudeen, aka Hassan, complete it though.
Hey, the Azanian.
He knows. Hassan is a youth inclusion advocate and he works with Hope Behind Bars. Together we'll be doing justice to the topic gender disparity on the outcome of the elections in Nigeria. I am your host, Orji Stephen, and we're good to go. So we'll be starting with Faith Waziri.
Hi, Orji.
Hello.
Hi.
So looking at the outcome of the 2023 general elections, we experienced the low performance of women in elective positions. And if you juxtapose this with the data INEC published on registered voters, they don't correlate. How do you see this? What do you think are the issues and how to go about it?
Okay,
what has
you
been your
very much,
experience? Yes,
Orji,
please.
for that question. Before I answer, my name is Faith Onomwem, so I have pronounced it well so that you can pronounce it also.
Onomwem.
Yes, Onomwem.
Okay.
And for your question, really, yes, we did not get like a huge number. Although I must actually state here now that we actually recorded an increase.
Oh.
Yes. At the only level where we didn't record an increase, which now affected the other offices as it may be, is at the Senate. But in the House of Reps, in the state assemblies, we had more women than we had in 2019, and even deputy governors. Now, it's talking about looking at the data of women as registered voters and how high the number is and why we still got few women. Let's look at the data of candidates. Because in Nigeria, it's only when a political party fields a candidate that you can be on the ballots. And so if the political party, we do not recognize, we do not have, our constitution does not recognize independent candidacy. So if you want to look at this, you have to start looking at it from the candidate level. We had, I think we had a total of about 15,000 offices for the 2023 general election, and for female candidates there were 1,533 female candidates. That was the first time that INEC published the list of candidates. Before we had courts, some had to be removed and all of that, but that was the data, 1,533. So when you have these odds, it's like just 10%, yeah. Mm-hmm. And so you have this, and it's some offices we do not have women at all running for those offices, and that's what you see. That also reflects in the state houses of assembly that we have today. We have 14 states that don't have any woman in their state assemblies, and of course we know that these assemblies will constitute committees on women affairs, and of course we know that men will be the ones. They are not even women's affairs committees. Other committees that we know that we need the input of both genders to work on. In these 14 states, there's no voice of any woman in the state assembly, and it's if we don't have this, and this is at the place where we need laws to be made. Now, when we look at the constitution amendment process, the electoral, women were a part of the electoral reforms, and taking a cue from Liberia. Part of what they were able to do with their electoral reform was that they were able to get a quota for women. And so the version of INEC, as it's were in Liberia, their electoral monitoring body chair, said that he worked with the law that was signed, and he made sure every political party made sure they have the quota of they had gender representation in their candidacy, in the list of candidates that they submitted. Now, when you look at the reforms before the 2023 elections, Nigerian women groups, activists were part of the electoral reforms. And if you ask me specifically, one aspect of gender that the electoral reform spoke to, or the Electoral Act 2022 spoke to, I cannot tell you that there is one. And that's the truth. You can just say on a general level, or you just talk about how women could just benefit. You could not say that there was anything that was major. And you now begin to hear people saying, why should we treat women different? I want to ask a question. When did women start voting in Nigeria? When were we recognized as political resources, as people that were important in the political sector, and even rights. Women that pushed and fought and made sure that they were there? I said it somewhere today that our stories are being undertold and underplayed. I said in primary school I knew Fumilayo Ransom Kuti as first woman to drive a car.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, in primary school, I knew Nnamdi Azikiwe as someone that contributed to our democracy. Yeah. No, and it's not funny. And I go back and I'm saying that I found out about Margaret Ekpo in my 20s because I was doing some research and it was by chance. So you're looking at all these things. I know I kind of deviated from the question a little, but we can see that we know that our primaries were heavily monetized, at the period leading up to 2023 elections. And not only women were affected, youths were also affected. In fact, I would say politicians were affected by the fact. And if we look at economic resources and the disparity when it comes to economic empowerment in Nigeria, the gender disparity, you see that the men in Nigeria have more access to economic resources and are more economically empowered than women. You get, and then you'd see. Let me stop. Let me not say.
So you believe money, party politics, what else? Laws and policies. Yes. These things inhibit as we have them structured presently in Nigeria. They play a strong role in inhibiting women's political participation. Yes. Amina, is this the same story across Africa as you have experienced it?
Yes. I think if we look at the numbers again, you see that from 2011 to 2015 to 2019 and then to 2023 general election, there's been a steady decline in terms of women's representation in elective offices. If you compare the just concluded elections of 2023 to the last election, you would see that there's been a 19% drop in terms of women representation in the parliament. So now we just have about 3% of women in the Senate and 4% of women in the House of Representatives. And if you look at it on a global scale, women constitute only about 24% in the parliaments across Africa. And for Nigeria particularly, we are amongst the bottom 10 countries globally. Yes, in terms of women's representation in the parliament. And just like Faith said, out of the over 15,000 candidates that ran for the election during the last cycle, only about 10% of them were women. So if you look at how that translates into factors that would eventually lead to women becoming candidates, there's actually a lot of problems. And the major one would be the political parties. And it's not just in Nigeria. When you look at it across other African countries as well, the major hindrance for women's political participation, or I think the major obstacle that women need to navigate before anything else, is actually the political parties. There's a lot of political parties when you go for advocacy visits and all, as civil society organizations and women's advocates, they will always tell you that my wife, I have daughters, my mother, my grandmother, so I support women and everything. All of those things that are cliche that you just hear, but when it comes to doing the actual job, you're not going to see what exactly you're expecting from them. A lot of their party guiding document like manifestos and all, you would see nothing closely related to gender or anything that has to do with ensuring that women have representation. And then from the political parties, it comes to the primaries. Because the primaries is like the major game changer, because it's through the primaries that the person would emerge as a candidate for a particular political party, because we do not have independent candidature in Nigeria. So we still have a long way to go in terms of navigating how the primaries work. I think that has been the major part that the male counterparts have used to go over women when it comes to that. Because if you cannot navigate the primaries at the political party level, then you are not going to emerge as a candidate. And if you don't have women as a candidate, then when do we even begin to talk about campaigning and being supportive and galvanizing for support for the women? You have to be a candidate first. And how would you become a candidate? It's through the party primaries. And the party primaries, I don't need to begin to go into details about the 1,000,001 faults that have to do with the primaries. If you're looking for data on party primaries in Nigeria now, it will be very difficult for you to get it. So you don't even have data as a basis for you to work with. And it's across that in other African countries as well. It's the same thing. Women continue to advocate. You will mostly find a lot of this where you find women representation in terms of appointments, and that's even governments that want to do something just so the activists will let them breathe for a little bit. They will give them appointments.
Is it Rwanda now or Liberia that achieved the 50%? What country is that again?
I think that's Rwanda.
That's Rwanda. How about them?
Rwanda. Well, they use the quota system. And the thing about the quota system is that it cannot be taken from one country and used verbatim in another country. I think different countries have different contexts, and the quota system it's a very good way to ensure that there is increase in women's political participation. But I also think that it will be important to also look at the context. Nigeria, Rwanda, Senegal, they are all African countries, but we have different people and we have differences in culture. We have differences in the way that we do things. So I'm not all about taking everything exactly the way that they have done it in their countries before, because it worked for them. That does not mean that it's going to work for us. But the quota system is good. But what about the intricacies of the society that we live in, the culture, the people, the norms that we have? Those have to be put in place, because at the end of the day, what we want to achieve is results. And for us to achieve results, if it means we need to brainstorm, put in more ideas, we need to make some modification, I don't think it's a bad way to go around that. Let me just stop there for now.
Hassan, what's, as a young person, as a young man, and how do you describe the experience? What's your position in all of this?
So I think the first thing first is we need to understand the Nigerian Constitution doesn't even regard the Nigerian woman as a first-class citizen. When you look at laws pertaining to women, you realize that as a man you have a lot of advantages over the woman, and it doesn't strike at you until you start looking at it maybe from the position of work, or when it happens to somebody that is very, very close to you. I know this is like this is not a way to look at it, but that is when you feel it. Your mom wants to travel, you are a minor, and your dad is saying no, so your mom can't take you out, because the Nigerian law says that you cannot take a minor out as a woman. Whereas your dad wants to travel, he does not need to sign any document. You are out of the country and everything like that. And that's not just it. There are a lot more. I mean, last year we had the gender bills, and I think there were like 5 or 6, and none of them scaled through. None. People were out on the streets, having these arguments and so when you look at it from that baseline, which is the baseline for every country is constitution, and then you look at how the constitution treats women in the first place, you then realize how parties, politicians and everybody would treat women. And just like Amina has said, when you visit political parties and you see all these things, they say, my mother was this, my mother was that, and everything like that. But when it comes to doing the actual work and then, putting out the real quota, it becomes a problem. Some people would even scale the primaries, and then, your party will take you to court, and then one way or the other, you're seeing names. Throughout the last election, we had a project with, I had a project with Faith then that we were working with politicians. And at every given point, I was looking at the names that INEC were releasing, and then, when I want to invite people for events or I want to see them, I get news that this person has been stopped by the court. He's no longer a candidate. And I'm looking at, what is that? Really? You've already typed the letter. You've already started. I mean, the dispatch person has gone out, and then you look at it like, I'm just wasting money, because at every given point, names were changing, and that affected women a lot. In some areas, in fact, women can't come out to even say you want to even run for positions. And also the Nigerian culture does not really help things. You want to have meetings, you're having meetings around 12. And these are stories that we've heard as a child. I've heard it as a child, going out around 1, 2 p.m. in the night to have meetings, strategic meetings. And then, the woman is telling her husband, I have to go for a meeting. And then the man is saying, over my dead body. Yeah. Do you understand? He hinders women, and that's just on the cultural aspect. And now you're looking at the economic aspect. I was on an interview recently, and then they were telling me what hinders women from gaining some freedom from even sexual and gender-based violence. And I'm saying that there is no economic freedom for the woman. Looking at the Nigerian society, there are more rich men than even average doing women. If you have, let's look at the richest people in Nigeria. I think it's just one woman that is there in the top 10 or top 15.
Wow. Yes,
and that woman, has had to brave a lot of things. Do you understand? And so, when you are now running in an election that, is money filled.
Heavy money, yeah.
Yes, the president of the country has to pay 100 million naira to buy a ticket. How many people can afford 100 million? How many people can even calculate how much they've spent since the day they've given birth to them till date? Everything. How many people have spent up to 100 million? And then you are saying somebody has to cough that out. And when you are doing elections, 100 million is just the start. You are not scratching the surface. Because you still have, that's just saying that, okay, this is to show my interest. And then the party has to interview you and say, okay, you are running for primaries. Now, when you now win the primaries, you now start spending. So if you have spent 100 million in just buying a ticket, do you know how much you spend in primaries? Yes. Delegates were collecting dollars then.
Wow.
Now you've won the primaries. You now need to go around 36 states and the FCT. You need to meet several people. We were relating with politicians, and you could hardly see them in one seat. And if you are calculating how much those people are spending, how many people have that kind of money? Now break it down. How many women have that kind of money, have that kind of power to even, to be able to. So when you look at it in that way, we have a long way to go before we can achieve parity in terms of women representation in politics, because number one, our politics is money driven. If somebody is able to get the data of money that we spend in Nigeria in politics, I am sure we spend more than India. And we spend more than America. People can say it because so the idea is that people can say the money that America spends is more because it is the official amount is out. In Nigeria, it's never out. There are some monies that you don't let people know that you spent. Yeah. But I may not be able to put my chest up for America, but India has ×5 of our population. Look at the number of states prime minister somebody has to visit to even become prime minister in India. And then compare it to Nigeria, and they don't spend as much as we do.
Wow.
So I think one thing, when we've not gotten there, is beyond the quota system that everybody's talking about. I think we also need to explore independent candidature, because again, parties have been structured in such a way, and parties are not even the best way for women to go in Nigeria, because at the end of the day, when you look at it, it's a two-party system, and they are dominated by men. And I'm a man, I'm saying this, and somebody can be there 20 years before me, and I join a party today, and I grow across. I go up the rungs of the ladder because I'm a man.
You know the right people.
It's not even about knowing the right people. It's there's this thing that we look at. Employers even want to employ you. They are looking at you're in your early 23, 24, 25, 26. You might get married soon, so it means that you want to take that 3 months. Maternity leave and everything like that. So the person is also weighing it into how they want to employ you and everything. Those are the little things that, we don't count in the political realm that plays out in the political realm. You are looking at it that, okay, so when she gives birth, who would run the country? When she gives birth, who would run that constituency? All those little things.
Cook at home in the other room.
Or I go to my senator's house and I see that she's cooking for her husband. Is it the husband that is controlling her? Those, and there are nuances that we don't express out, but they play out when people vote.
Yeah.
They play out when people vote. You don't when you and they don't. People don't say it on camera. They don't. It's when they are just having casual conversations. The reason I won't vote for that woman. Why would a woman? I mean, I was in a trip to Osun State before the last election that this woman, Akpota, ran in Kogi State. And I was in a bus filled with people. They were dropping a Kogi and everything like that. And the majority of the people were saying they don't have anything against that woman. But just because she's a woman, they would not vote for her.
Are you kidding
So
me?
you mean that, okay, somebody has the right plans and everything like that. But because I feel, she doesn't look like me. She's not a man like me. I'm not going to vote for her. And these are the little nuances. So we need to start from society first. Look at the woman as, a first-class citizen. The woman should have the same right as a man, and then it can then translate into political gains.
Okay. So we've mentioned the quota system, we've mentioned gender bills and all of that. One thing is certain when you look at Nigerian elections, right? I think that data said 70% of the votes cast in every election has been cast by women and young persons. And yet, these are the least people represented at the seat of power. And now you've mentioned also constitutional hindrances. The way you even explained it, it looks like our constitution is brewing confusion. Do you understand? When it comes to gender parity and all that, I know you've done a lot of work. Commendable work around this area. Talk about that underrepresented documentary. Check out that documentary. It tells the story of women representation in Nigeria. Talk about the work you've done around electoral reforms and even the gender bills, How do we go about this? What solution are these initiatives supposed to bring to solve this quagmire that we found ourselves in?
Okay, thank you very much, Stephen. And I think I have to, commend you for putting this show together. I think these conversations are very important and it's very timely because lack of awareness is one of the greatest challenges when it comes to conversations around women in politics and underrepresentation. So I think this is really timely. So in terms of solution, when I was listening to Amina, she said something very interesting. She talked about quotas, but I think the most important thing she said was that it has to be context specific. And I was very happy to hear that because most people don't understand that. So quota is a very, very popular word. And sometimes I think it's a bit, it can be a bit overused. So once people hear quota, people get so defensive and they think, it's not merit-based, you just want to just pick and choose and all that. But I think there needs to be an understanding around quota and affirmative action. I prefer to use the term special measures, really.
Okay.
It's more overarching. Yeah, temporary special measures.
Temporary special measures.
So that's my preferred term. And, they come in different formats. So in terms of solutions, I think for me, I'm a lawyer, so I feel that's the way. I think the legislation approach is the best going forward. So because if you really look at the efforts of women activists and women groups, you find out that there's a lot of, or in the past, there has been a lot of focus on the resources approach. So there's a lot of training, there's a lot of mentorship of women, awareness, they train women on building their political skills, there's fundraising, all that is very important. I'm not saying it's important, but experts will tell you that will put you on the slow track. It only gives you incremental change. Do you understand? Even though he talked about, attitudes towards women, you cannot change culture overnight. A lot of us have unconscious bias, even as a woman, because we are not socialized into politics, we're not socialized into power. We grow up hearing, a woman's place is meant to be this. When you watch TV and you see, even when you look at the National Assembly on TV, you just see men all over. And people don't understand the subliminal message. They don't understand imagine a young woman watching that. You think it's normal that space is occupied by men. So in terms of solutions, I think all that is important, attitudinal change, even, the training and the mentorship. But if we really want to get on the fast track, if we want quick results, you have to use legislation approach. I'm a lawyer, and I believe that the legislation approach works. Because that is what most countries have done. So in Africa alone, there are about 54 countries, and I think about 41 use some form of special measure.
Really?
Yes, to elect women. So the special measures are wide. It could be a candidate's quota at that party level. Then you have seat reservations, and I'm going to come to that. And then you have the legislated candidate quota. So you have voluntary party quotas. For instance, in South Africa, that was how they were able to increase their numbers. The ANC, they have voluntary candidate quotas in their party constitution, where they have a target for electing women. You also have that in so many countries. So in that case, you really don't need legislation. But the thing is, you need to have very strong party discipline. Your party has to be very developed. But in Nigeria, our parties are not very strong. There's lack of internal party democracy. So a lot of times people say, oh, just go to the political parties, let the parties work it out. I don't believe in it. I don't think, I have an opinion that may be unpopular. I don't think Nigerian political parties, as currently constituted, have the capacity or even the incentive to nominate women. A lot of people say go to parties. I don't think they have the incentive, and I'm going to explain why. Because your electoral system, the context is different, like Amina said. Candidate quotas work very well in countries that use proportional representation systems. He talked about two parties.
Please explain.
I'm going to explain. He talked about two parties. So proportional representation system are countries where parties win seats in accordance with the votes they win in elections.
Oh, yes. Not the winner takes it all.
It's not a winner takes it all. So South Africa, Rwanda, all these countries you mentioned, they have a form of proportional representation. Then I think Senegal has parité in French, parity, 50-50. 50-50.
For who now?
Men and women. Yes, mandated. And they use proportional representation. So proportional representation, what it does is that it tries to bring in smaller parties. So if you go into the election and you get 20% of the vote, you get 20% of seats in parliament. So that is the problem Nigeria has. So we use first past the post. First past the post is winner takes it all. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of us contest elections. I get 40% of the votes. The rest of you shared 60. I win. I don't have majority.
That's exclusive, and it's really.
I don't have. So it's just first past the post. So I win. I don't win. So it's very, very. So what happens is I create that two party where you have two very dominant parties. So what happens in such electoral systems is that parties put in their best person, their best candidate. For them, it's a do or die. And they put in the person who they think is the most broadly accepted candidate, and usually a man, usually an incumbent who is male. So they don't really have what I call that wiggle room. They don't want to let's just test a woman and see if she's going to. So that woman has to really, really be formidable. She has to be formidable to go against a man. So, but in proportional systems, not only do they win seats in accordance with the votes they win, there's also something very important. They use what they call multi-member districts. So let me explain it. So in Nigeria, we have what they call single-member districts. One person, you have one rep, senator house, we all have one person, right? Mm-hmm. Proportional system use what they call multi-member districts. So in each constituency, they can have up to 2 or 3 reps, 4, 5. So when their party says we want 30%, 35, or 1 out of 5 candidates, it's very easy. So what they do is that when they come to a constituency, if you have 3 open positions, they can say out of the 3 candidates we are bringing in this constituency, 1 is going to be a woman. So electoral system is a very huge factor. As far as I'm concerned, I think we should all go and look at the 2008 Uwe's report. It is a fundamental issue. We cannot have conversations about representation without looking at our electoral system. We cannot, because when you have that multi-member, it's easy to now apply quota. Candidate quotas, for me, are not workable in Nigeria, to be honest. Legislated party, because you don't have that wiggle room where you have so many members, and then you can say, okay, out of 3, 4, 5 candidates or slots, we're going to give 2, 3 to women. You only have 1. So if you look at expert studies, if you look at academic scholars and, people who have done in-depth study on women representation, the finding is that countries that use single-member districts, it's really difficult to apply quotas or nominate women because you have only 1 slot. Mm-hmm. So all the parties, you have 18 political parties in the last elections, for instance, everybody, you only get to choose 1. So it's very difficult. So it is about formula and mathematics, and that is why I think seat reservation, for me, is the best way. Seat reservation is used in Rwanda, actually. A lot of people actually don't know that. Rwanda uses seat reservations. And India uses seat reservations. So seat reservations means you just reserve a portion. And it can happen in different ways. It can be rotating. India, for instance, has what they call rotating district. So they put aside a portion of seats for women in every electoral cycle. The advantage is that, you don't get to expand the parliament. It goes around. They use it at the local government level. And I can tell you that their numbers jumped. I think in the early 90s, they had about 5% of women. But as soon as they implemented that, the numbers jumped to like 40 or 50%.
Wow.
And in September, in fact, India has been fighting for seat reservation at the national level since the 90s. And in September 2023, I think after 20-something years, 26 years, they just approved for seat reservations in their lower chamber. So I think Nigeria should exploit because of our own context. Because the truth of the matter is, we have done this work on affirmative action, and the first question politicians always ask you is, whose seat is the woman going to take?
Exactly. Who
So
sits?
the question is,
Who
how are you
sits?
going to ask? Are you going to tell him not to run? And again, the Constitution guarantees, equality, freedom from discrimination. You cannot tell a man. In fact, I've heard politicians tell me, see, if you pass this in, we are going to sue because it's discrimination. You cannot tell me not to contest. And even if you tell the parties to work it out, the party is going to tell people not to run primaries.
Yeah.
Do you understand? If they conduct primaries and a man wins, you tell him, oh, step back, it's not your turn. So that is where the idea of seat reservations come in. Do you understand? So, the proposal that we came up with, or that we supported in the 9th Assembly, was to create extra seats, because that is what countries that use our electoral system, yes, that's what they use. Yeah. Because the truth of the matter is, you are threatening male power. That is just the reality. Yes, as an advocate, you have to see, when you are doing advocacy, you do your risk matrix. Do you understand?
Yeah.
You have to be honest. Do you understand? Who are your champions and who are your spoilers? People have power. There are people who are in those seats, and you say, oh, you want 35%, you want 50. Do you know what they are hearing? Somebody is going to be displaced. They are not hearing inclusion. Their interpretation is exclusion. Oh, somebody is going to be thrown out, and it's not going to be me. So the reality is, just looking at the context, the system, having that conversation and seeing what works best. In my opinion, and the organization I work for, we feel that seat reservation, that's creating those extra seats for women to come in, is the least threatening. And I know a lot of people don't really like quotas or affirmative action measures because they feel it can entrench inequality. Some feel it can even create a glass ceiling for women, and okay, once they get to that number, that's it. But the way around it is to kind of put what they call a sunset clause in law, like attach a time to it and say this is just going to operate for a certain period. So that's my own take. Honestly, I think that legislation approach, they have to be compelled, because legislators, let me tell you the way legislators work, and as you can see from the way we amend the Electoral Act, anytime they want to fix something that is not working in our system, they go to the law. Look at primaries. Why do they need the Electoral Act to force them? You must do primaries this way. Don't change people. There are some countries that don't have the level of detail, but they conduct their primaries neatly and they don't fight. But with all the provisions of the Electoral Act, politicians are still fighting. And they are even still trying to amend the law. Do you understand? Concerning primaries. So our reality is that our political space is highly contested. It's highly contested. So I think nothing short of legislation will make the men they'll take it seriously. And that way you also create an actionable right for the woman. So if there's a law in place, she can get up and say, oh, okay, there's a law in place and you flouted this law, so I want the courts to enforce my rights.
So I'm this is interesting, From my own part, I'm not even a legislator, and I'm imagining they will now do special seats for women.
We are going to change that term, special. So that's part of it.
You're making it seem like So again, it goes back to how we view women in the society.
Yes,
it's like you're helping them.
Exactly.
And again, let's just bring them inside.
I understand.
They're not supposed to be inside.
I totally agree. The word special was also contentious. It's just like gender, like the GEOB, gender and equal opportunities. The legislators said equal, like no, we don't want equal. So like, okay, should they change it to equity? Do you understand? So we are aware that some of those terms, trigger people. So those are the conversations that are going on behind the scenes in terms of, okay, the title. Because this is actually not special. It is not an appointment. In some countries, women in parliament are appointed. Saudi Arabia, a lot of countries, women are, the idea is to create a women-only constituency. And those women will contest. They will run. In fact, let me tell you one thing.
And they'll do campaign like
and let me tell you one thing people don't even understand is that the way the bill is drafted, that women constituency is actually larger in size. And you know what that means? It means that she's going to do a lot more work. campaigning.
What's the name of this bill again?
It was called the Special Seats Bill in the Ninth Assembly. But my thinking is that it's probably going to come back repackaged with a different name. But the seats, it's the same type of seats, and it still doesn't mean that regular seats are not open to women. I think in Tanzania they use the word women constituencies. So I think maybe these are some of the things that conversation we have to have in terms of maybe changing the terminology and letting people understand, so they don't think there's some kind of additional benefits that the women or the occupants are going to get because they're going to do what everybody the work. And at the end of the day, the political parties are going to benefit because you all get to bring a woman, and they cannot tell us that they don't have strong women in their parties that they can put forward.
Hassan, I'm seeing you have a lot to say. How are you viewing this, considering our context also?
So, I mean, I understand that context plays a big role in this thing, but also we need to understand that, I mean, this is a point of view that I've always held, that Nigeria is a very poor country.
Poor?
Very poor country.
How are we poor when our election money is bigger than India and US?
Look, for example, in the past few days, people have been ranting on social media and been complaining that, Nigeria took this amount of delegates to the COP28 and everything like that. Because, again, you're saying there's no money. You're saying, the masses should tighten their belts, and then you're spending money on this. And at the same time, you're still claiming there's no money. So, I think expanding the whole constituency, from 469 to whatever number is going to be, becomes, it becomes. I can't remember that that is saying we need to collapse government into, government needs to be smaller. Nigerian government needs to be more compact and be able
less
to
capital intensive.
And so when we increase the number, we increase the number of people we are paying salaries, we increase the number of people, the aids and everything.
Number
like
of
that.
jeeps we have to buy, armored SUVs.
So why can't we take out of that? And I know it's a very, very strong thing to do, but it's still from that numbers that we need to pick from, because that is the only way we can then say we are moving forward as a country, in the sense that, number one, we have not expanded our constituency numbers. Number two, we are still paying the same set of salary, which we say is already too much. And number three, I feel we should rotate it, just like she had said. And that was some of the conversation I was having before we came in here. We need to rotate it in such a way that and it goes for a number of years. You don't do affirmative action indefinitely. You do it for a number of years. I don't care whether it's 200, 500 years, but you say this is where it stops. And so by then, the system would have been so absorbed in such a way that women running would not be a new thing to people, and then women can run for themselves. But if we increase it right now, I'm looking at what it will cost the Nigerian government. Or maybe we can then look at
having women, not having women on tables already costing us.
Yeah, okay, then maybe that's the point.
Do that cost a lot.
Yeah, we did actually. My organization did a PLAC. We did a cost benefit analysis. Yes, so I completely agree. That was one of the challenges we also had, the increased cost of governance. But we also, looked at it against the cost of exclusion, because right now,
I agree with that. That's a very important point.
By not having women in politics, and the truth of the matter is, I work with the National Assembly, and really look at a lot of the bills that they bring. They have a lot of establishment bills. Do you understand? They keep
establishing one commission or
the other,
one agency or the
other.
So
if you really see that, even your budget, do you understand? We see budget doing analysis. They see duplicated and repeated items. Let me tell you, if we really sit down, it just needs political will. If we sit down, just take a very good look at our budget and say, okay, where can we cut down, or what adjustment can we do? Trust me, I believe the country can accommodate, especially if it's timed. If you time it, then the planning can be done towards managing the costs.
Amina, what are your final thoughts?
Well, my final thoughts would be, in addition to everything that everyone has said, when Pete was talking, she talked about how during the last election we actually had an increase in the number of women candidates, but 90% of those women ran under smaller parties, what we categorize as the parties that are not so popular out there, and that in itself is actually a problem, because there's a lot more work for them to be done. First of all, for the parties to be known by people, and then subsequently get into the campaign and the primaries and the likes of that. So the quota system, using context, I don't know if we need to look at it vis-a-vis the cost of governance, but I would say that this has been going on for the past how many years, and women have been excluded. If we add them going forward for a certain period of time and it costs us a little bit more and that will give us results, I don't see where the problem is with that, because we've been spending so much already in the last number of years, and where is the results to show? So I think it's just
Wow, it's been an interesting conversation and I really wish we can continue, but we have to stop at this point. If you intend to continue and learn more about the issues we've talked about today, please log on to our website and take the courses we are offering on the website. After you take these courses, you get to be part of all this. You get to be part of the change we are hoping for in Nigeria. And I encourage Nigerian women, Nigerian girls, slay queens, slay mamas, Gen Zs. Let's work together and build this Nigerian dream. Thank you so much for joining our show today. I remain Orji, your host on the Democracy Games podcast. See you next week.